Goeiedag, good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Now, my regular subscribers will know that on the 28th of October, I was scheduled to have a live stream with Angelo Agrizzi. But just days before that live stream, he was put behind bars by a judge. And we now have some background information to what actually happened from Melinda Ferguson, who was the publisher of the book Inside the Belly of the Beast, which was written by or authored by Angelo Agrizzi. And it's an amazing book. I've got a copy. Angelo sent me a copy long before it was actually released. Okay, so this is what's been going on behind the scenes, just so you know. On Thursday, the 5th of November, 3 hours after former South African Airways board chairperson Dudu Myeni had willfully blurted out the identity of Mr. X at the Zondo Commission, I found myself holding hands with her nemesis, Angelo Agrizzi, in ICU at a private hospital in northern Johannesburg. Despite having worked intimately as a publisher and editor with Agrizzi since July on his just-released corruption memoir, Inside the Belly of the Beast, I had never actually met him in the flesh. With strict COVID-19 regulations restricting visiting times to just 1 hour and one visitor a day, I had to pull a few Agrizzi moves to secure 30 minutes with my author. I tentatively approached the patient, surrounded by banks of beeping life support contraptions. A dialysis machine discreetly washed blood in the background. It felt phantasmagorical. Now, I'm going to just show you a couple of images of what she's talking about. Yeah, that's Angelo Agrizzi underneath all that medical stuff. This is a guy that they put 9 armed police around for days while he was actually not released on bail, despite, this is in the hospital, despite having all this stuff attached to him, because he might just escape miraculously. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, let's continue. You look like Hannibal Lecter, I teased as I stood beside his bed, covered in a full-face ventilation mask hooked up to an oxygen machine with graphics of lungs showing each intake of breath, with all that plastic covering his face. It was hard to see whether he was smiling back. Hello, Angelo. Buongiorno, Bella. ICU has a disarming way of touching one's soul. It felt only right that I should take his hand. 6 months earlier, I had been repelled by the idea of Agrizzi and all he represented. I'd fobbed him off a number of times as a self-confessed corrupt racist when he had approached me via email to pitch his memoir. But life in its bizarre twists and turns has a way of making mincemeat out of what we think we know and who we think we are. In July, I grudgingly read his manuscript, Inside the Belly of the Beast. I was blown away. Despite my preconceptions and distaste for what he represented, I quickly realized that as a former COO of Bosasa, Agrizzi had produced an astonishing memoir, tracking almost 2 decades of bribery, politicking, and corruption. The public interest argument won me over. At a time in our country when corruption has become the most urgent scourge to address, Agrizzi's confessional memoirs is a vital piece of evidence in further exposing the corporate and political crimes that redirected billions meant for the citizens of the country. The public is owed this information since much of it directly relates to the criminal pillaging of state coffers, and may I add, this is my statement, not hers, that the pillaging is being done by the black privileged. We know who they are, the ANC politicians, their family, their mates, the well-connected, the cadres. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. She goes on, as I got to know the subject, my own moral compass and perceptions changed. You don't have to be a paragon of virtue to be the messenger. Back in ICU, Agrizzi points to the dialysis machine, chugging blood. They're making cranberry milkshakes out of me. The past 3 weeks have been a macabre dance between life and death for South Africa's biggest whistleblower. Before Agrizzi was denied bail by Magistrate Phillip Vorster on the 14th of October on the grounds of being deemed a flight risk and incarcerated at Johannesburg Central, also known as Sun City, his kidneys had been working just fine. In fact, despite the numerous comorbidities and respiratory issues that necessitate him having to carry around his own oxygen tank, the controversial whistleblower had been relatively healthy before the Department of Correctional Services got hold of him. Now, kidney failure and the subsequent threat of total organ shutdown has necessitated daily dialysis. He seems to be reading my thoughts. They tried to kill me twice, he said. I lean in closer. I urge him to recollect what happened when he heard his bail had been denied. He said, I was shocked when the judge refused me bail. It came as a big surprise, as Manny, or Wits, who is one of his attorneys, had assured me the day before that it would all be sorted. In hindsight, Agrizzi should probably have smelt something when he was transported in a Casper from the Brackendown police station to the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court to appear for the bail hearing. About 9 police cars accompanied me. It was totally over the top. After the shock of his bail refusal, Agrizzi was led out of the courtroom, oxygen tank in hand, and forced to walk up 4 flights of stairs. That nearly killed me. I was really struggling to breathe. From court, he was back in the Casper, again accompanied by a ridiculously large police escort, and placed in a cell inside Sun City. I had to hand all my belongings, including my phone. I wasn't allowed to make a phone call. Luckily, Andries van Tonder, a former colleague at Bosasa, was allowed to give me some clothes. In the cell, Agrizzi was given a prison-issue oxygen tank. Lights went out at 9 p.m. Agrizzi tried to sleep. At about 10 p.m., I heard a clinking noise, and someone entered my cell. It was too dark to see what was happening. Then Agrizzi lost consciousness. I suspect something was done to me in that cell. I have no recollection of anything until I woke up in the Chris Hani Baragwanath. I soon realized I had soiled my bed and that there were very heavy chains shackling my legs. With no nurses in attendance, he implored the prison guards, who were now standing guard in his hospital room, to help him to the bath so that he could clean himself. They told him to make his own way. Still no sign of a nurse. He said, there was no dignity. I crawled like a dog down the corridor with these chains on my legs and finally found an old yellow-stained bath. There was no plug and only cold water. It makes little sense to many South Africans why an important whistleblower like Agrizzi, who is a vital witness to the corrupt relationship between Bosasa and certain political players, has been shackled and criminalized while a large number of Dudumienis are allowed to walk free and are not brought before our judicial structures and prosecuted. Anyway, he fashioned a stopper from a plastic Coke bottle he found, which became my best friend, and managed to clean himself, still chained. He dried himself with a t-shirt. I borrowed a pair of shorts from the hospital. Agrizzi has scant recollection of what happened to him at the state hospital, where he lay shackled for 5 days, until Monday the 19th of October, he was rushed in an ambulance to a private clinic in northern Johannesburg. He said, "All I know is that my condition worsened. I do remember speaking to an intern doctor, Nazir, I think, doing his rounds, who must have alerted someone to have me transferred out of this hellhole. I have been told that once I arrived at the private clinic, 6 or 7 nurses worked on me to revive me, as I was basically dead. When I finally regained consciousness, one nurse showed me her hands, which were black and blue from trying to revive me." 2 days later, on Wednesday the 21st of October, Agrizzi's lawyer, Manny Witz, informed the media that his client had suffered a heart attack and gave some insight into what was happening behind closed doors in ICU. He said, "There are about 9 armed guards, including 3 stationed physically in his intensive care room. For whatever reason, we're not certain why. He's also restrained to the bed by his legs. The man is sedated. He's on a ventilator, which is down his throat. He's on dialysis. He's on drips. I'm not really sure why they think or where they think he's going to go." With all Agrizzi's comorbidities, especially his chronic respiratory condition, there appears to have been no attention paid to the possibility of a constant flux of prison guards infecting Agrizzi with the COVID-19 virus, a sure death sentence in his condition. For the next few days, Agrizzi hovered unconscious between life and death. He was intubated, he was fed through a tube and plugged into a bank of life support machines. On the 30th of October, 16 days after he was incarcerated, Judge Ratha Motgolang overturned the Palm Ridge Court's decision and granted Agrizzi bail, set at about 15 million rand. Agrizzi has a TV in his room in ICU. Earlier in the day, he had watched Dudu Mienzi Zondo's testimony, where she repeatedly refused to answer questions on the grounds of not wanting to incriminate herself. In Inside the Belly of the Beast, Agrizzi writes, "As I would later testify to the Zondo Commission, Dudu Mieni received 300,000 rand a month for the Jacob Zuma Foundation. But she refused to have the money transferred by EFT. It had to be cash. Either Joe Gamedi, Trevor Mathenua, or Gavin Watson himself handed it over. There was never a formal letter requesting this donation or thanking Bosasa for it. It makes little sense to many South Africans why an important whistleblower like Agrizzi, who is vital witness to the corrupt relationship between Bosasa and certain political players, has been shackled and criminalized, while a large number of Dudu Mienis are allowed to walk free and are not being brought before our judicial structures and prosecuted. Agrizzi has managed to sit up in bed for the first time in weeks. He said, "I have made a vow to myself to get better. I am not dead. I have every intention of walking out of this hospital and going back to Zondo to cross-examine the people I have named." And I'm looking forward so much to when he is able to having him on a live stream with the Loving Life channel. As I said, I'm in direct contact with members of his family, and that has been organized, but obviously we've got to wait for legal approval to do so. All right, guys, that's an update on Angelo Agrizzi. Don't forget, tonight at 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Peter Hammond. It's going to be a very interesting discussion, just an update on what's going on in the world today. Please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Ring the bell for the updates. Please like this video. Please share this video. And above all, please stay safe. Bye for now.